You look in the mirror and you look okay. The hair's looking good, the skin's still looking good. You're getting ready for work, you're getting ready for the day. But something still feels off. You just feel exhausted. Like no matter how much you rest, you don't feel reset. At the end of the day, you just don't want to do anything. You might even be doing the Netflix and chill, binge watching, and still just don't feel anything. And that was me too. I felt like I'm not burnt out. I'm still functioning. I'm showing up for my kids. I'm showing up for work. I'm getting ready for work. I'm doing all the things. Check, check, check. And I always thought burnout was you're stuck on the couch and you can't get up. You might be depressed or have a lot of anxiety. You might just not be able to do anything. And certainly I did get to that point in my burnout collapse. But burnout can look different for different phases of it. It can actually have a functionality to it until the crash. So in this like messy middle phase on the way to burnout, you might be functioning but feel depleted. Like no matter what kind of progress or check off that to-do list, you just are done after every task. And it might still be showing up as performance that you're still getting your job done, you're still getting things done around the house, but not complete collapse. Again, you're functioning, but not at a super high level or thriving way. And in reflection to this messy middle phase and into my burnout collapse, I would say that life was kind of like in maintenance mode. Like I was doing things just to do things, just to get them done, but like I didn't feel joy in them. I didn't have like big feelings one way or another. It was just surviving. I didn't have excitement for things that I did. I had that decision fatigue almost instantaneously, whereas I could usually work through things. And if something at work got canceled, like a meeting, I felt like this instant sense of relief, but then it would immediately be replaced by something else, feeding that sense of depletion. So, why this is happening? This is functional burnout. This is that middle ground before others start seeing behavior changes in you, which is actually phase 8 of 12 of burnout. So, that's pretty far down into these phases to burnout collapse. So, this middle phase, these few phases in the middle are still functioning, but inside you start to feel those changes happen. Now, where I begin these conversations with people, similar to where I began the conversations with me in this messy middle, is I thought it was about too much work. I'm working too many hours, I'm doing too many things. But the reality was, I had some misaligned energy patterns in there. My energy was leaking all over as a people pleaser, with someone who didn't have boundaries, with not even knowing what the value I bring, the value that I'm doing, the things that I'm doing every day. I was letting my days just be run on autopilot instead of intentionally. So that misaligned energy patterns were happening. The constant context switching of pings and pongs, chats and emails and dings and dongs all over the place, everyone demanding my time. I didn't know it at the time, but now I know I was in response mode to everyone around me. I kind of didn't own anything in my schedule, which is difficult as a working parent because at work, people demand things of you. At home, people demand things of you. So, where was that middle ground? How do you work through that? And between the misaligned energy patterns and the constant context switching, there was a lack of recovery. Like by the time the kids went to bed, I would sign back on for work, try to catch up on the overload, and then I would maybe go to bed too late, or maybe I would try to watch some shows and catch up on some sort of life that I wanted to have and go to bed way too late. So I didn't have lack of recovery, not only sleep, but also during the workday. I would go from a chaotic or conflict situation, conversation, and then have to go into another meeting. Like there was no thinking space to recover or reset myself throughout the day. So we have misaligned energy patterns. We have that context switching that is draining you, with the lack of recovery. And then on top of that is the emotional labor that we don't really give space for about what is going on? What am I carrying that isn't mine? All those pause spaces and stillness to process that emotional labor you might be carrying is now gone. And then let's stick on top of it right now in this current day is the never ending change. So we're getting some change fatigue in there. So that was 5 reality checks that I had that is feeding the burnout, feeding the phases of burnout. And I was still functioning, but again, feeling depleted, kind of feeling a little bit more number these days, to what's going on around me and a lot less joy. So when I began to shift these patterns from functional burnout into actually addressing what's going on so I can get back to energy, reclaim that energy, I found out that I was always addressing output. I was in like this permanent operating mode of output mode, which means I know how to produce, I know how to get things out, I know skill sets, I know how to get things off the list, check, check, check. But I didn't really learn how to recover. So, a common thing you'll hear in recovery or people suggesting to recover is go take a vacation. Well, guess what? That vacation is going to be in 3 months, in 6 months. They might say things like practice self care. Again, if you're not addressing the underlying patterns, you're not really addressing the dysfunction feeding that exhaustion. So, here's a few steps to start addressing that dysfunction in the messy middle, feeding that functional burnout. We're not going to wait for the vacation. Sure, go ahead and take a vacation, but don't wait until then. You'll be further into burnout and chronic stress. You're probably not going to even enjoy it. Focus on self-care that works in your lifestyle, that can be integrated and not forced. But here's the steps that really gets that energy flowing again and starts to address what is causing the exhaustion and depletion. Step one is figure out that biggest energy drain going on. What is repeatedly leaving you depleted? For some people, that's actually at home. For some others, it's at work. For some, it's people and relationships. For others, it's operational dysfunction, like meeting after meetings or broken workflows. What is repeatedly leaving you depleted and drained? That's step one. Two is look for the patterns underneath. So say if you're always in meetings are draining, you'll say something like, I hate meetings. I said some things like, I hate meetings. But what is the pattern underneath? That's what we need to address. So instead of I hate meetings, it's I spend 6 hours a day in meetings and I don't even have time to think, to actually work. That's the underlying pattern. It's not that all meetings stink. It's not that I completely hate wholeheartedly meetings. It's that a majority of your time is spent in meetings, probably unproductive ones, and you're not getting to that value or progress in your day. So that's step two. Step three, address the pattern. Begin the shift. You're not going to fix everything overnight, so just address one dysfunctional pattern. Maybe that's batching your meetings. Maybe that's blocking out time for deep focus time. Maybe that's having a discussion with people in the meetings about not having the meeting. So through these steps and addressing this functional burnout by identifying what's draining you, looking at the pattern underneath, and then beginning to shift that pattern, you can start to move out of this operating in outcome mode into being more focused on how do I recover my days. And when you start recovering your days, you start approaching them a little more intentional, reclaiming that energy. The goal is not to get everything done in a day. The goal is to stop normalizing exhaustion.